How's it going, music maker? In today's video, I've got something really special lined up for you. Many of you that have watched the channel before and kind of followed my mandolin playing career probably know that I am absolutely obsessed with Tiny Moore. If you're not familiar with Tiny Moore, he was the electric mandolin player that played with Bob Wills from about 1946 to 1950. He's also legendary in the mandolin world, not just for his work with Bob Wills, but later with Merle Haggard, and then his kind of own solo projects and a duo project with Jethro Burns called Back to Back. These are all probably things that you're really familiar with, but something special just happened here a couple weeks ago. David Grisman's record label, Acoustic Disc, just released a previously kind of bootleg-only tape of Tiny Moore playing at Larry Blake's back in 1980. Now, this isn't just your standard live recording, and we'll get into this later because I've got a special friend, Dix Bruce, who actually recorded this entire concert to tell us all about it later. But just to give you an overview of what we're going to talk about in today's video, I'm going to give you a little bit of background on Tiny Moore and why this record in particular is really special and really important to the history of the electric mandolin. Stay tuned for more. Before we go ahead and dive into today's video, if you haven't had a chance, hit that subscribe button below and the bell notification button. That way you'll get notified whenever we upload a video here to the Mandolin Secrets channel. Also, if you're interested in an extended cut of this interview that I'm about to show you with Dix Bruce, as well as other archival information on this Tiny Moore recording, check out the Mandolin Secrets Academy below. There we're going to have all sorts of extras and goodies for you if you're interested in that kind of thing. I almost forgot to mention too, inside of Mandolin Secrets Academy, we have a mini course on Tiny Moore licks and phrases. So if you're interested in kind of unlocking the sounds of Tiny Moore, check out the Mandolin Secrets Academy below to learn how to sign up so you can access all of that great instructional material. Okay, so like I said before, this is a really special recorded event, but let's back up a couple steps. You may even be wondering, who is Tiny Moore and why should I care about him, Hayes? So Tiny Moore was an electric mandolinist that was born in 1920 in Port Arthur, Texas. He kind of got his first big break with Bob Wills and his Texas Playboys in 1946 and became a mainstay of the kind of jazz and western swing world from that point forward. Now, Tiny Moore went off the road with Bob Wills in 1950 to manage Wills Point, a kind of resort out in Sacramento, California, and began playing with Billy Jack Wills, Bob's younger brother at this time. This was kind of a transitional period for Tiny, I would call it. You know, beyond this time, he hosted a television show in the Sacramento area, and then eventually opened up his own music store where he taught lessons and sold gear for years. Before we go ahead and dive into any of the interview footage with Dix, I thought it would be great to just kind of start with some samples of this record. Now, I did have the chance to ask Dix for his recommendations for a few focus tracks, and I think because of his personal attachment to this project, which you'll learn about later, he was unable to kind of give just one or two tracks that you should listen to. But we kind of agreed that there were a few highlight tracks that you might want to listen to if this is your first time checking out Tiny Moore and diving into this record in general. The first one that I think you folks should listen to is Sweet Georgia Brown. The next track that I think is worth mentioning here is It Had to Be You. This showcases Tiny's playing on kind of a more down or medium tempo jazz ballad, and I think if you listen to this track, you know, like many people that were first exposed to Tiny Moore's playing, you would kind of assume that this was a guitar playing, right? I get a lot of guitar tone vibes out of the first kind of round through the melody on this one. But let's check out a few seconds of It Had to Be You. And the last one that I think folks should kind of immediately go to if you only have a few minutes to listen to this album is Back Home in Indiana. Now, a lot of people know this as the kind of basic chord structure that Charlie Parker wrote the tune Donna Lee over top of. Excuse me, Miles Davis and Charlie Parker. But this is kind of a great interpretation of a standard swing number that a lot of, you know, Western swing, but also straight jazz guys still play today. And there's some really hot Tiny Moore playing in there as usual, right? A lot of tiny isms. So let's check out a few seconds of that. Okay, gang, you can't deny it, right? That's some pretty hot playing and some pretty impressive stuff, even from just those brief samples that I gave you right now. So now that we have an idea for what this record sounds like, let's go ahead and dive into that interview with my pal Dix Bruce and kind of get some background on Dix's relationship with Tiny, how he got to knowing him, and then kind of how it came to be that Dix was the audio engineer behind this entire record. First off, we're going to kind of talk about Tiny's persona and get Dix's take on that, and then we're going to dive into some more specifics about the recording and everything. So there's some pretty hilarious moments in here and some really good kind of golden nuggets if you're interested in kind of your Tiny Moore trivia or just kind of West Coast music trivia in general. So let's go ahead and dive in.
I met Tiny at a fiddle contest in Northern California. At this point in his life, so this would have been 78, he was really concentrating on the fiddle. And he would go to all these local fiddle contests and compete. And I had heard about him, but there I was in the guitar contest at this, I think it was in Redding, California. And I played a David Grisman tune. And I won. And after I played, this older guy who probably was like, you know, in his late 50s, came over to me and said, "Dang, we like that. It was pretty darn nice. I would like your playing a lot." And I said, "Oh, you know, I was worried to play this modern tune. I thought that the judges would, oh, heck no, man. We loved it. I'm here with a bunch of old guys. And, you know, Tiny Moore, he liked that." I said, "Tiny Moore is here?" He says, "Oh, yeah, he's competing in the blah, blah, blah. Would you like to meet him?" And I said, "Yeah." The guy brings over Tiny Moore, and he's not tiny. He's big.
Yeah.
And I met him, and I knew Daryl Anger, who lived down the street from me, and Todd Phillips, who were in the David Grisman quintet that was just getting rolling. And they put out, in 76, they started putting out this magazine, Mandolin World News. And I was talking to Tiny. I said, could I come and interview you for Mandolin World News?" And he laughed, and he said, "You want to what?" I said, "Well, there's this mandolin magazine that David Grisman runs, and I could interview you for that. Would that be possible?" And he said, he just thought it was hilarious. He said, "Well, sure, come up to, you know, Sacramento to my store. Here's my card, give me a call, and we'll set something up." And that was how this all started. I met him and kind of became friends with him. And, you know, no, I wouldn't say friends, but I mean, he was very nice to me. He was a really encouraging fellow. And I was going to say he was reserved, but he wasn't reserved at all. And I mean, he would pull jokes on you and stuff. And, but he was incredibly poised. And he was poised because he'd been on TV. He'd been in the Bob Wills band, so he knew about that kind of show business. He'd been the MC at Wills Point after he stayed in Sacramento, if you know all about that stuff.
Yep.
When that ended, he started working for a TV station, which was the reason it ended, because people stopped going out during the week. He said, you know, it was just like this. When TV was introduced in Sacramento, after like 2 or 3 months, attendance was like that.
Wow.
Ironic that he went to work for them. And he had a kids' television show, a cartoon show, Ranger Roy and Anna Banana. Anna Banana was a monkey, a pet monkey that they had. And so when you heard him on stage, he was just like, he didn't joke around, but it was all business. He was really good at that, really calm. And have you heard the Larry Blake's live thing yet?
Yeah. I listened to the whole thing 3 times.
And you listen to the ending where he says, well, we're going to do just one more tune. And it's me and this guy, John Gonder, going, more, 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 you know. He says, yeah, we're going to do another one, you know. But he was really good at that. And he almost always in those ensembles that he put together, he would be the MC. And he was very good at it.
Every time I meet one of my, like, you know, kind of hero musicians or something like that, their personality always lines up with the music that I've heard. You know what I mean? It's like there's like definitely a connected relationship between how you interact with people and how you interact with your instrument and put music out. In my opinion, I don't know if that's BS,
Yeah.
but
Well, with him too, his playing to me is just joyful somehow. And,
yeah,
and there's just this communication with him and his instrument and with music that maybe comes from that calmness he had, or that surety of himself somehow. And there's another guy that I think of the same way as this. Did you ever hear of Clifford Brown?
yeah,
So he wrote Joy Spring and
yep,
stuff. There's something in his playing too that strikes me the same way. Is it's just this interaction with music, and maybe with the crowd too. Because Tiny was very, very, again, with that being a good MC thing, he was very conscious of, here I am and I'm in this role and I need to talk to these people and I need to, communicate with them. So, and all these guys, again, they were making a living, and they were, they had a choice of, I can do this or I can do that. Just seeing the reality of those guys is so different than, you know, what we thought it was. So anyway, getting back to that, but
so after we had a chance to kind of briefly talk about Tiny's persona and Dix's relationship with him, we got more into the recording and how Dix got involved with that. How initially did you get involved with like recording this show, and like how did the show even come to be? Because it was really refreshing and cool for me to hear, because like you say in the liner notes, this is like a super rare kind of Tiny ensemble, right? Like he's playing like a real jazz combo, not like a Western swing band or something.
I,
So like what's the kind of background on the ensemble? How did you get involved with the recordings? That kind of thread.
I heard about this date with Tiny. I called him up and said, I just got this new tape recorder. Could I bring it down? What he would always he would always just sort of laugh at these silly things that these younger guys would do. You know what I mean? Like kind of just that like, okay, I guess.
Whatever you want, yeah.
Yeah, whatever. And I didn't think about asking the other guys. And these other guys were 3 guys that you heard about. There was a radio station in the area called K Jazz, and they played 24-hour jazz. And these guys always, every week, Dick Whittington will be at the blah, blah, blah hotel. Rob Fisher will be blah, blah, blah. These guys were the famous guys. And the drummer, Vince Ladiano, I think he played with Cal Jader or somebody like that. Maybe one of the, big time stuff.
Yeah, heavy hitter.
And yeah, so anyway, John Gonder helped me. John Gonder was the student right? And he made 5-string mandolins, solid bodies, and he wanted to get one of those Roberts ones, and he tried it out, and he just didn't. He thought he could do better, and he made a bunch of mandolins, and then got bored with it and got some computer degrees, I think. But seeing Tiny meet these guys, and in the first set, um, he introduces the guys, and he gets their names wrong, and Vince Ladiano he couldn't say, and in the introduction at the end, then he got it right. And I can't remember if we left it in where he says, Vince Ladiano on the drums, and Vince goes, "You got it." Tiny goes, "Yeah, I got it that time," or something like that. Anyway, so Gonder helped me carry this stuff. It was down this long flight of stairs, really long flight of stairs, subterranean bar, and that thing weighs a ton. But at the time, you just think, set the stuff up, and it took the first set. It took us a while. Took me a while to figure out what it was. The first song, most of it was recorded 4-track mono. So I didn't know about those buttons yet, right? So everything was everywhere. And then all of a sudden we just went, oh, this sounds like, I think I had headphones. This doesn't sound, seems like it should be separated. Oh yeah, did that. And apparently, now Tom Phillips remembers Rob Fisher, who was the bass player, coming up to Sacramento to run through tunes with Tiny, right? But Tiny didn't rehearse with the band. They just, I think, went over a list of tunes that Tiny called, during the sets. And I can't. I wrote a whole bunch of stuff, and we cut it way down for the thing. So if you've already heard this stuff, tell me. It was on the 20th of December, so there was very few people around in Berkeley because it's a college town, and there were very few people at the bar. Probably just people that came in for a drink, but they didn't come in to see these guys play. It's the only time that they played there, as far as I know, and they just went from tune to tune to tune. And Tiny had, Tiny uses the little like saxophone thing around his neck.
Yeah.
And I mean, he was just so adept at picking up the fiddle and putting it back down. And he had this little, I could kind of picture it. And somebody else said it was made out of rebar with some felt on it. But it was this little stand that he could put the fiddle in and the mandolin, hang it on. It was real convenient for him, is he'd take one, grab it like that. And that was it. That was the show. And
once we made it through the kind of vibe of the recording, how Dix got involved, and how the night actually went, we kind of started to talk about the fact that these tapes just sat in Dix's closet for a number of decades, and it was a bit of a process to kind of get the original tape cleaned up and in a usable format that could then be turned into a record. So here's some footage of us talking about that process.
I just love editing and loved getting this stuff together, but you do it, and it's kind of like all these pictures that I have, where for Mandolin World News, I would take a 36 exposure roll. So I would use those 2 or 3 pictures we used out of 36 and file them away. And that's why lately I have these that I've been showing you, that I went back and went, geez, I've never printed these. No one's ever seen these. Anyway, same thing with the tapes, where about a year ago, a couple months, I saw them out in the garage. And I always would see them when I'd walk by, and I'd just say, God, these things are deteriorating. I really should try to dub them and see what's there and see what'll play. And so played it on the Akai, and the first set would not play. And I went, oh shit, okay. So I baked them for 4 hours at 140 in a food dehydrator, and it's miraculous. It works great. So I cooked all 4 tapes. I knew about this Tiny thing. I used to listen to it in my car. I put in the cassette, and I started to try to sing these solos, and then I tried to transcribe the solos, and I transcribed a few of them, and just learned so much from doing that, And people would say, well, can you give me the transcription? I was trying to say, well, I could, but if you
That's
tried it, you would learn so much more.
it's not the point, right? I love it. Like
Yeah,
you and I, we have the exact same methodology for learning the solos too. Like I've done, I think I looked at it before this today. 44 tiny more transcriptions I have like
great.
written out, but they were all sung first before I even touched the mandolin or touched the paper. I think because from what I've heard from Tiny, that's kind of how his deal was. Like if you can't hear it in your head, then it's not, you know, like he would try to voice, you know, some of the things that he would hear as opposed to just like playing finger patterns and stuff like
Yeah,
that, right? So
yeah, yeah.
that's super cool, Dix.
Well, and it just always was in the back of my mind, and a lot of this was prompted from a student I have, really good mandolin student now, who just like same thing as us, as I gave him that tape on a CD before it was the old version, and he just started transcribing stuff and just fell in love with it. And he came to me after a lesson that I'd given him that CD. He came back and he said, "What's going to happen to this stuff?" And I said, "Well, it's in the garage. It's like I can always." And I realized what he's talking about is when you die. And I thought, oh yeah, and guys my age are dying now. So I thought, God, my wife or my daughter, they're just going to throw this stuff out. They don't know what it is. They can't play it. They don't know how to play it. And that was what, it's that pandemic thinking really, where you just kind of go, geez, I really should go through that stuff and just see what I have and catalog it and dub it if I can. And so that's what kind of prompted all of this. I dubbed this stuff. It sounded great. I sent it to Grisman. But anyway, that was sort of the what got me going on this. And I've still got boxes of cassettes out there that I may have run out of gas on that. But I've got a lot of this really stuff that I thought was really valuable. I have an ADAT copy of it, which could still have that sticky shed syndrome problem. I guess you can cook those. I never have. Uh,
Yeah.
and so that's how that came about. And that's kind of my involvement with it. It was just very, I said, I got this machine. Can I try it out? And, as I listened the next few days, I just said, God, is this great? I think this is great. I think this is great. And I, at the time, I mean, I was aware that, well, I couldn't put this out because, well, I don't even think we had CDs then, probably not. Um, but the cost of it, and then you'd have to get everybody's permission, and you have to get this, and you have to get that, and I mean, it was not even a pipe dream until a few years later when I thought, well, this after Tiny was gone, and this is all we got. This is all I got, and I listened to it so much and loved it so much. I mean, I'm really glad. And the thing about David Grisman too, his standards are so high, that it's really intimidating. And but when he got back to me and said, "God, I think this stuff is really great," I said, "Well, should we cut?" We only cut one tune, and when he sent it back to me, it just sounded nicer. I don't know. I really don't know what he did, but I think he said all he did was played a little bit with the EQ of the 2-track. See, I was amazed that he let me send him 2-track mixes because I thought, I said to him, David, I can send you this stuff multi-track, and he says, no, you're the producer, you do it. He was so nice about that, and
Man.
it's like, who am I,
Yeah. So I guess he was
I
just
know.
kind of maybe more interested in like a mastering approach to it when once it got to him or something, right? You know,
Right, that's
that's
exactly what he did, and
yeah.
it really sounds good, and I'm really glad that, I have felt that this was like, um, never felt any ownership of it, but I said, I do have this thing that, I would have wanted to hear, and there's probably a few more people out there that would want to hear this. Yeah, yeah, and I think Tom mentioned me. Somebody else um, mentioned that they had seen your stuff and that I should get in touch and that you would want to know about it. And so, I mean, that's really, I feel really, it kind of feels like I did the right thing. The pride that I take in it is not any ownership or any uh, whatever, but that, yeah, you know, I had this stuff in my closet, and really, you know, I can't see any scenario where it wouldn't have got tossed out.
Yeah.
It's
Well, I'm so
so good.
thankful that you did take the time to do this. Like it's seriously like nothing like this exists. Like we said at the beginning of our talk, right? Like there's no Tiny Moore recording that I know of that even comes close to this kind of thing. So like thank you for doing that, you know?
But I bet you now there'll be like 10 that'll come out of the woodwork. People, oh, I got, you know,
But hey man, if you were the catalyst, like then thanks 10 times over, you know what I
well,
mean?
yeah, well, that would be great. And I mean, in thinking about this stuff, um, I really, I felt compelled in a way to do it, you know, that it was like, it would be irresponsible for me to, you know, not do something if I can. And, you know, geez, you get up in the morning, you just say, well, today maybe it would be nice to, and not bother with that stuff. But I really felt, you know, I needed to.
Hopefully, like what you were getting at, like I know that there's a group of people in my generation that are rabid for this stuff, you know what I mean? So it's the torch is being passed, you know.
But
Don't worry about that, man. I think yeah, it's
well,
it,
we can thank Bruce Pettit for reminding me how old I am. And
thanks Bruce. I appreciate it.
when I said, when I realized, when he said, well, what's going to happen to this stuff? I kind of went, oh, you mean when I croak? And
Yeah, it was like that boom, you know, like that weight comes down, right?
he was kind of embarrassed that they said that, but that's what he meant. So
Well, a big thanks to you, Dix, for giving me all of this great information. And don't go croaking on us just yet, man. Okay, we've gotta keep you around so we can keep diving into all of those archives you've got in your garage there, right? All right, folks. Thank you so much for checking this video out, and I hope that you've gotten a lot of good information about Tiny Moore and this legendary live recording here. Like I said earlier, I had to do a video about this because I'm such a huge Tiny nerd, and I hope that this can kind of, you know, spread Tiny to a bit of a wider audience here. I always find that his playing is a little more underappreciated, mainly because a lot of people didn't even know he was a mandolin player, right? When they were listening to these records back in the day, they thought it was just guitar. But Tiny had, you know, a really kind of long-standing career and is one of those guys that I think just continued to develop his musical voice and prowess right up to the day he died. If you read the liner notes that Dix put together for this album, Tiny actually died on stage in 1987, so I think that says a lot about the guy and his playing and his personality, right? But thanks so much for checking this video out. As always, we've got links to all of the things we talked about below. Check out the link to Acoustic Disc. That's where you can download this album. It comes in FLAC and MP3 format, so you've got good lossless audio as well as smaller files that you can take with you somewhere, and a great kind of PDF of liner notes that you can download as well. Also, be sure to check out Dix Bruce's website, musicsnow.com. That's MUSIXNOW.com. Dix is an amazing educator, like I said, and I can't thank him enough for taking the time to do this interview with me and to just put this record out in general. I hope, Dix, that you can realize that this is a huge gift that you've given future generations of musicians, and it's definitely not lost on me, so thank you very much, my friend. I appreciate it. If you haven't had a chance already, hit that subscribe button below and check out mandolinsecrets.com. Like I said, if you sign up for Mandolin Secrets Academy or the Mandolin Secrets Guitar Club, you're going to get access to this extended cut of the video here. If you want to hear some more kind of in-depth kind of nerdy things that Dix and I got to talking about, like, you know, the type of tape that was used on Dix's recording machine and all that stuff. So check out the link below to mandolinsecrets.com. All right, my friend, I think that's it for this video. Definitely check out those links below in the description and drop us a comment below in the comments section. I know that we typically don't do videos like this on Mandolin Secrets, but would love to know if you're interested in this kind of format and if you want to hear more historical type of content. All right, my friends, thanks so much for checking us out. Take it easy. Keep making music, all right?